morning, church. How y'all doing? Good. Everybody get one of those green pebbles? It is not sour apple. Don't eat it. Steve found out the hard way. You'll be all right, Steve. We are in the midst of the Lenten season. This is a period of time where we spend in preparation for Easter in self-reflection and looking at ourselves and how we sense that we may be falling short of being the people that God has created us to be. It's not a time where we flog ourselves for being worthless. It's simply a time where we look deeply within ourselves and check our motivations and try to understand what is it about me that is preventing the full measure of the grace of God from overtaking my life, creating a great impact, a positive influence on all those who surround me. So this season, we've been talking about those things that fill up our cup, fill up ourselves, those things that we place within ourselves or nurture within ourselves that tend to work to displace that space where God's grace and mercy and love is created and we are created to contain. We've been talking about it, and these little stones represent those things that we're talking about. We began with pride. This little white stone representing pride. And there's something that we have to understand. It is that these in themselves are not bad things. It's necessary to have a little bit of pride in ourselves. It's when these things go amok that we get into trouble. Because if we think about pride, the right amount of pride will tell me, I am not greater than any of you or anyone. But the right amount of pride will also tell me that I am not less than any of you or anyone. Now, if I go either way off that center mark, if I have more pride in myself and it's telling me that I am greater than, then I can quickly come to a point where I believe I deserve more and you deserve less because I am greater than you. And conversely, the same holds true. If I do not have pride, if I do not have the right sense of self-worth, then I am not worthy of any of the gifts of God, which is a lie. So the right amount of pride is necessary. Bless you. And then we talked about anger, the red stone. It's not cherry. Trust me, I tried it. The anger. And again, it's the same thing. The right anger is appropriate. The right anger is necessary because the right anger will move me to address injustices being inflicted on other people. It will move me to be upset when I see somebody being treated unfairly, somebody not receiving all they need to receive in order to flourish in this life. That is a good anger, but when anger runs amok, when anger becomes too much and begins to consume me, then my energies are directed at selfish gain. Because typically our anger that is too much, that is consuming, that anger is placed in fear. It's based in fear. It derives from our belief that I'm not getting what I need, or somebody is going to take from me something I already have, and I get angry about that. When it's all fear. Last week we talked about greed. Now, I'm not sure what good we can say about greed other than the fact that we need to understand that we have needs. We have needs for sustenance. We have needs for shelter. We have needs for clothing. We have needs, and the pursuit of fulfilling those needs is not a bad thing. What becomes bad is when we when we pursue these things in excess, when we sacrifice the other on the altar of getting more, that's when greed can become very, very harmful. And so finally, today we're going to talk about envy. And if you grabbed one of these green stones, hold on to it because I'm going to make you jealous. You should have been here yesterday. Yesterday morning, a whole group of the leadership of this congregation got together and we talked about some things, and it was an amazing time. One of the things that made it amazing was they actually wanted to be here. Blows my mind. They wanted to give up a Saturday morning to come and talk about how we can better create ministries for everyone to participate in so that we can share the love of God that we know through Jesus Christ. It was an amazing thing that happened. Also, yesterday afternoon, something even more amazing happened. A whole bunch of these white stones got thrown away. A bunch of ladies gave up every last bit of pride they had and put on a play for us. It was really quite good. And they did it not for selfish gain, but for the benefit of others. They did it to raise money to help restore Prince Memorial Baptist Church. We believe to be the oldest African American church in existence in Texas today, right here in Weatherford, Texas. So they threw away their pride in order to help someone else, which was quite an amazing thing. And you should be jealous if you missed all of that. There is still opportunity to participate in that restoration by donating to Disciples Women's Fellowship. If you would like to help them, they came very close to reaching their goal of what they hope to raise by losing all shame. And if you were here and you saw it, you know what I'm talking about. But it was good, and it was entertaining, and it was a very good afternoon. But altogether, when we allow these attributes, these God-given attributes that we have, when we allow them to run amok and begin to consume us, begin to fill up our cup, it will put us in a place where very, very often we will become angry because you have what I want and I deserve it more. You have what I want and I deserve it more. So we're back to this text that Shanna read so beautifully this morning. This is a parable of Jesus, a story that Jesus tells for us to gain some understanding of what the kingdom of heaven might be like. And we know it's a parable from the very first phrase, for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner. Jesus might as well be saying once upon a time. It's a trope. Like a fairy tale is a trope. Once upon a time, we know the end is going to be happily ever after, right? This is the same thing. A parable is a trope. It is a way of teaching a lesson through telling a story. And we're alerted to that in the very first phrase of this passage. And when we hear that, we can say, yeah, I can let go of the notion that Jesus has given me a history lesson. There probably never was a landowner, and there probably never was a vineyard, and this event probably never happened. I can let go of that, and I can listen for the lesson that Jesus is trying to tell me through this story. Everybody good with me so far? Okay, good, because this is important. Now, this story starts out pretty simply, and it makes sense at the beginning. And as we go through it, it makes less and less sense. Before we get into the story itself, we have to understand that the people who are hearing this story, that audience of Matthew, the one who is telling this story, the one who is retelling those words of Jesus to his community in the gospel according to Matthew, these people who are hearing this are not like us. They just are not like us. We live in a very diverse culture, economically speaking. There are some of us who are poor. There are some of us who are wealthy. And we are all gathered in the same space to the same store. Matthew's hearers, the ones this gospel were directly speaking to at the time it was put together, they were not so diverse. They were all dirt poor. They were living literally hand to mouth. So when the landowner goes to the marketplace and hires these workers to come work in his vineyard for a denarius, what he's talking about is for that day's sustenance. Because a denarius, the typical wage of a day laborer, was enough almost to provide sustenance for a person for a day. My daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. So at the beginning of the story, we hear this landowner goes to the marketplace. Why it's the landowner and not the manager of the property, we are not told. But the landowner goes to this marketplace and says, come, won't you work for me for this day? And they negotiate a price. And they arrive at a fair wage, at least what is considered to be a fair wage at the time, a denarius, a day's pay. So they agree and they go to work. A couple hours later, landowner goes back. Hey, why don't you come work? This time they don't negotiate. He just says, I'll pay you what's fair. They say, okay, they go. This happens again. And then finally again at 5 o'clock, like the last hour of the working day, he goes to the marketplace. And here are these people who have not yet had opportunity to work that day. And what does that mean in this context? Well, deductive reasoning. Work with me here. What does that mean in that context? They ain't going to eat. They have nothing for my daily bread. They are going to go to bed hungry and hope the next day that they will get something to do, some work to do to make enough to buy their daily bread. But what does the landowner do? Why don't you go out to the vineyard, go to work. And at this point, anything is better than nothing for those who are still in the marketplace, the ones who were not given the opportunity to earn their daily bread. And so they go. The work day ends. It's time to settle up. The landowner tells the manager, pay them all. Start with the last ones. So imagine yourself as the ones who were called first. The ones at daybreak who went out into the field, started working. You've been out there all day long, in the sun, in the heat, working in the vineyard, whatever that means. And you're watching, knowing that these folks, they just got here. You're watching, and they get paid a denarius. Oh, check that out. They got paid what we agreed we'd get paid for the whole day. Then he watches the next people. They get the same thing. They've only been here about half a day. Surely, I'm going to get more than that denarius. It's only fair, right? And here's my pay. A denarius. What? That's not fair. I've been out here working all day. I deserve more. I am more than. Here you are making this Yahoo who just showed up an hour ago equal to me. That's not right. Sound familiar? That's not fair. I should get more. And how does the landowner respond? It's the deal we made. It's my money. I can do with my money what I would like to do with my money. I will spend it how I feel I want to spend it. But it's not fair. It's not fair. I paid you what we agreed to. It's not fair. I am better than. I deserve it more. They are getting what I should be getting. It's not fair. A friend of mine always used to say, life ain't fair and damn little of it's fun. And he's pretty right. That's just not fair. Does any of this sound familiar? Does any of this sound like it might be what is in my cup? When I think about this morning in first service, they had to leave because they're going to a conference down in San Antonio. But this morning in first service, my wife, Melissa, who is the director of Unity Recovery, Texas, and her son, Dr. Robbie to me, thank you. They were both here. And I am envious of the work that Unity Recovery is doing. Because the work that they are doing reminds me of this landowner. Because the work that they do, it often involves people who have had contact with the criminal justice system. How's that? Because their philosophy is everybody deserves daily bread. Think about that. Everybody deserves daily bread. Everybody deserves an opportunity to flourish. Everybody deserves the help that they need in order to function within society so that they can enjoy the opportunity to flourish. It's like those people at that marketplace at 5 in the afternoon, an hour before quitting time. The reason that they are not working is not because they didn't want to, it's because they were not given the opportunity to. But it's not fair. Why should somebody like that, somebody who made bad choices, why should they have the same opportunity as me? I've been working hard. I got up every day and went to school. I got up every day and went to work. I saved my money. I did all this stuff. It's not fair. They should have to do the same thing in order to earn the right to live a flourishing life, right? It's only fair. When we think about this story and this parable, a lot of times people hear that God is the landowner, that God is generous. I like that reading because it makes a lot of sense to me. That God is generous with God's grace. And when we stand there like those first called employees and we say it's not fair, it's like we are standing in an ocean of God's grace with all of that peace just running all over our bodies and whining because we want more rain. It's not fair. Shut up. Last week I talked about situations beyond our community. Situations as a nation. Situations as a world. When we draw borders and we say, this is ours because we took it, because we earned it, and that's yours, you stay over there, and somebody comes in anyway, it's not fair. Yeah, I had my chance for flourishing. Yeah, I had my chance for a life, but I earned it. I deserve it. I'm better than you. It's not fair. And as I said last week, I don't know the answer. But I do know it is not fair. It's not fair at all. Because I won the lottery on my birthplace. Does that mean I am better? Because I won the lottery unto whom I was born, does that mean I get more? Because I won the lottery to be born here, does that give me the right to trample on anyone who dares to invade on that. Because I won the lottery. Does it give me the right? We were created with a purpose. We were created, as Jeremiah might say, as clay pots to be filled. We were created with a purpose to tend to God's creation. We were created to love God. We were created to love our neighbors. We were created to love ourselves. When we fill ourselves with excessive pride, when we fill ourselves with excessive greed, when we fill ourselves with rage, when we fill ourselves with envy, we are displacing, we are taking up that space that God intends to pour God's grace into, to pour God's own love into, to pour God's care for all of creation into. We are to be the vessels of all of that in God's creation so we can do what we were created to do, so that we can tend to God's creation, so we can tend to one another. This is our purpose. This coming week, a week from today, Sunday, is Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is a celebration. It's as if we are going into Jerusalem with innocent ignorance, unaware of what the events of the week are going to be, unaware that as the week goes on, that it will unfold, that by the end of the week, the Christ will be dead. And Saturday will be silent. And it's not until Easter Sunday but we go into Palm Sunday with this innocence. Really not aware of what it is that we're doing. Really not aware of the notion that we are cheering on this Messiah. Because so far this Messiah is doing all the things we want this Messiah to do and be. Then Good Friday comes, and the innocence is gone. And we begin to look at ourselves, and we begin to understand, I really wish I hadn't have done that. And the guilt sets in. And all through Saturday. But then on Sunday, on Easter Sunday, I can't think of the word for it. It's not remarkable. It's not extraordinary. It's not amazing. It's beyond any word that we can think of, but that grace of God is poured out in creation. And the love of God is still present. And even more so, as we are invited to be with the Christ in life eternal, we are invited to recognize that there is a right amount of pride, there is a right amount of anger, a right amount of greed, a right amount of envy. We have the opportunity to remember that we are created to contain all of that as we carry it into God's creation. Amen? Let us pray.